pulled up with pure grind and wild ambition. One had the sharp mind with a business vision that could flip a whole block, and the other had the muscle that knew exactly how the streets move. Isaac Hicks and James Sawyer didn't just survive Miami's cocaine era. They ran it like a kingdom built on discipline, strategy, and straight fear. When the Miami boys marched north, whole cities switched sides overnight. Orlando got shook, Atlanta took hits, and anyone who tried to stand in the way just vanished. So how did two dudes from Liberty City build one of the South's most feared substance empires? Let's run it. Isaac Hicks, known in the streets as Turnpike Ike, didn't start off chasing crime. His first grind was clean work, cutting grass as a landscaper. That's where he learned discipline, detail, and a non-stop work ethic that didn't crack under pressure. After that, he leveled up into construction, building homes all across Dade County like he was laying the blueprint for his future power. But Miami in the 80s wasn't normal. It was a storm of fast money and dangerous opportunity. The substance trade exploded, turning regular neighborhoods into battlegrounds and gold mines at the same time. Ike spotted his moment and used those same sharp instincts that helped him stack legit bread to build something way bigger, a whole cocaine empire. Soon he was pulling in millions every month, and it wasn't just Miami on his rhythm. The entire state of Florida was dancing to his beat. What made Ike different wasn't just the cash, it was his style. He stayed tucked, solved problems with calm moves, and showed love to the people who earned it. That respect followed his name everywhere it landed. And even when the substance money poured in, he cycled it right back into his construction business, building up Dade County while secretly stacking millions behind the curtain. Then you had James Sawyer, boss man to the streets. His story came straight out of Liberty City's struggle, where growing up meant learning how to fight for everything. Big, fearless, and always ready to hold his ground, Sawyer became Ike's right hand and protector. At first, the job was simple. Guard the stash spots, keep danger and snitches far away. But Bossman wasn't just muscle. The way he operated made people pay attention. He ran lookouts like they were a real squad, calling out orders and locking down corners like he was commanding a whole street unit. Before long, Bossman wasn't just protecting Ike's spots. He had his own locked down. One crack spot tucked inside one of Ike's buildings and backed by a Colombian pipeline turned into a money fountain. Bossman was stacking close to $100,000 a day like it was nothing. Ike played the quiet strategist, the one who moved like a chess master, while Bossman brought the muscle, tall, heavy-handed, and with a temper that could flip an entire block in seconds. If Ike was the CEO, Bossman was the enforcer, no question. Word in the streets was crystal clear. Nobody crossed Bossman twice. And when they looked around at the local crews hustling sloppy burning money on loud cars and shine with zero rules or structure, Ike couldn't stand the chaos. These boys are wild out here, he told Bossman. We're going to give them something to stand behind. That spark turned into a blueprint. And just like that, the Miami boys came alive. A crew of sharp young black dealers out of Liberty City and Overtown, two of the toughest zones in Miami, started making real noise. They called themselves the Miami Boys, but holding down Miami wasn't enough. By late 1984, they took their grind on the road, sliding into Orlando with plans to carve out new territory. At first, it was quiet. A couple rented houses, a few apartments off South Paramore Avenue and West South Street. Nothing crazy, but it didn't stay quiet for long. Soon, everyone in Orlando knew exactly who they were. Police estimated at least 125 Miami boys were spread across the city, holding down different spots, and they didn't blend in either, not even trying. The Miami boys had a signature look. Shaved heads, big gold chains, rings, gold caps, everything loud, everything meant to grab attention. Locals teamed up with them fast, running errands, delivering packages between houses, and watching corners, signaling when cops rolled by. Police figured out quick that these weren't random street hustlers. Someone back in Miami was pulling strings and sending orders. But the Miami boys didn't move like a typical gang. They were loose, more like a connected network that clicked together when the moment was right. And they kept things smooth, too. Officers said whenever they approached them, the Miami boys acted polite, cool, and respectful. But behind that calm surface was a cold machine powered by cocaine money and intimidation. By 1985, there was no missing their presence. Day or night, if you drove past their spots, you saw parties, cars lined up, and everyone shining. Locals whispered about rival dealers catching shots. Not fatal ones, but hits to the shoulder or backside. A warning shot with a message attached. We're here, and this block is ours. And that message hit hard. Dealers who used to run South Paramore started sliding a few blocks north just to stay out the Miami boys' path. Orlando's local hustlers didn't have the stomach for the level of violence this crew brought with them. It was a whole different energy. Police tried pushing back. After a 3-month undercover run, they scooped up 22 people, 14 of them straight out of Miami. For a second, it looked like the pressure slowed things. But by summer, the Miami boys came back heavier than before. Merchants in the area said the cops were trying, but nobody believed the arrests made a real dent. The crew was too organized, too deep, and the fear running through the streets was real. Shooting victims refused to talk, scared of what might come next. One man called the cops and ended up with a bullet flying through his window. That was the warning shot. Then came the June unaliving. Curtis Johnson, one of their own, dropped outside an apartment building. Detectives figured it was an internal beef, proof that inside the Miami boys, loyalty always came after power. Police Chief Henson wasn't letting them take over without a fight. He made it clear the only way to crush the Miami boys was non-stop pressure. Day after day. No breaks. No breathing room. But the dealers weren't exactly hiding. In one raid, cops even found a sign boldly saying, "The Miami boys are here to stay." That shook officers who'd worked big city streets in Philly or New York. None of this was new to them. It was just Orlando getting dragged into the same old street battle for territory, money, and control. To the Miami boys, Orlando was just another block to claim. But to the people living there, it felt like a storm they couldn't dodge. By 1986, the Miami boys had already stretched into Atlanta, spreading their reach across southern cities. And the money in Atlanta was different. What sold for $500 an ounce in Miami jumped to triple that up north. That kind of profit made the move too easy. When they slid into Jacksonville later that same year, they pushed right into the city's crack and heroin trade. And in Atlanta's housing projects, it didn't take long for them to stand out. Among residents with nothing, those flashy chains, diamond pieces, and Dolphins or Hurricanes gear lit them up instantly. Everyone else rocked Falcons, Hawks, or Yellow Jackets, but these boys made it clear exactly where they came from. And what they brought with them wasn't just product, it was violence, intimidation, and straight in. Police officers and housing managers noticed fast that this crew was nothing like the local dealers. The crack they pushed was stronger, the weapons were louder, and the intimidation they brought felt like a whole different league. Residents talked about how bold the Miami boys acted, standing on corners, flashing guns, using walkie-talkies, and serving product out in the open like it was just another day. And that you couldn't even walk through certain blocks without somebody trying to put a rock in your hand. Older folks in the community felt the shift heavy. Activists like Susie Labard said longtime residents were scared to even leave their apartments. Robberies, break-ins, purse snatchings, all of it became regular life, and people felt boxed in with nowhere to run. Police started realizing they weren't dealing with some loose group of hustlers. This moved closer to an organized crime setup. The Miami boys rolled into Atlanta's low-income neighborhoods knowing the ground was untouched and wide open. Crowded hallways, thousands of vacant units to stash product, and a built-in customer base willing to pay premium prices for high-grade coke gave them perfect cover. To them, Atlanta felt wide open. Back in Miami, federal task forces were choking the streets, making it harder to operate, so they shifted north where the laws weren't hitting as hard. That's how the ones called the Untouchables back home spread across the southeast, popping up in Orlando, Tampa, Pensacola, Jacksonville, Montgomery, and Savannah. But no place got hit harder than Atlanta. And to send a message, they made brutal examples. A 22-year-old dealer was kidnapped, shot in the head, and dumped on a county road. Another hustler took a dozen bullets in broad daylight. Ruthless and direct. Even innocent people got caught in the chaos. A 60-year-old woman lost her life in the crossfire of a substance battle she had nothing to do with. Cases like that showed how reckless and violent things had become. By the spring of 1986, the Miami boys were locked in a full-on battle with local crews. Arrests came, but nothing slowed them down. They had already planted their flag in places like Techwood Homes, John Hope Homes, and Egan Homes, and thanks to their South Florida connections, they could undercut every competitor. Better product, lower prices, and faster moves. And if dropping prices didn't shut down the competition, they leaned straight into force. Police said new recruits were flown or bussed in directly from Florida, handed cash, guns, and product the moment they touched down. Housing was even covered like they were employees in a street corporation. Anyone brought in was fully grown, ready to work, and already wrapped in the life the moment they arrived. In just 2 years, the crew expanded from fewer than 10 people to around 30, running shifts like a full-scale business. They even set up drive-through style stop-and-cop spots in project parking lots. Bold, organized, and dangerous enough to change whole neighborhoods overnight. Cops were straight up admitting they were outgunned out here. While officers walked around with basic sidearms, the Miami boys were strapped with Uzis, MAC-10s, and 9mm pistols like it was standard gear. By 1987, at least 13 unalivings were officially tied to the crew, and investigators were calling them Atlanta's biggest problem without hesitation. But while the Miami boys spread through Atlanta and beyond, starting in October '85, the feds and local authorities launched an 18-month mission aimed at the whole operation, not just small-time runners. Over that stretch, they hit almost 20 different Miami-linked spots with search warrants, and every raid turned up more than the usual coke, guns, cash, and jewelry. What really mattered were the ledgers, paper trails showing the inner workings of the empire. In the first 3 months alone, investigators locked onto 3 main houses. One was on Northwest 95th Terrace where Sawyer lived, another on Northwest 91st Street tied to Jay Smith, and the last on Northwest 105th Street where Isaac and Janet Hicks stayed. To tighten the case, agents leaned on informants to make controlled buys, 3 or 4 total, straight from Sawyer at his place and from Smith's house. Undercover eyes also watched the streets, counting nearly 300 cars rolling in and out of the area in just 3 hours one night. Not exactly quiet traffic. Sawyer and Smith kept linking up with the Hicks crew, keeping their supply line tight. Then came January 7th, 1986. Law enforcement pulled up with warrants for Sawyer's spot on 95th Terrace and Smith's place on 91st Street. Smith just happened to be outside when the raid kicked off. Inside, agents found white powder, packaging supplies like manila envelopes with red labels, and cash tied to Smith and Isaac Hicks. The firepower was wild. A rifle, a crossbow, a hand grenade, plus several handguns. In Smith's car at Sawyer's place, they found 2 more handguns and a fat stash of cash. Sawyer himself had $2 grand sitting in his pockets like it was gas money. But the biggest catch was the ledgers, packed with coded notes and color-marked systems tracking narcotics, cash, and names. Sawyer, Smith, Hicks, and more moving right along with them. Later that same month, after another undercover buy at Smith's spot, the feds doubled back with fresh warrants. This time, Sawyer and Smith were together when they slipped up. Inside, they found more white powder and photos of Smith posing with cash and guns, the kind of evidence investigators dream about. Both houses also held loose papers filled with entries matching the exact ledger system agents had already grabbed from Sawyer's place, tying the whole operation together piece by piece. After all those raids, things went quiet around the houses. But the feds weren't even close to finished. With a secret informant feeding them steady tips, agents started making buys at a new spot Sawyer pointed out. Then in late June, they swung back to Sawyer's place and hit it again. And this time, they struck straight gold. White powder, bagging materials, cash, ledgers, even a handgun. The whole setup was sitting right there. A month later, on July 25th, an undercover agent scored a half ounce at Hicks's house, and that buy gave police everything they needed to move in with a warrant. When they raided Hicks's spot at 2000 Northwest 105th Street. He was there with Sawyer and a few others. Inside, agents uncovered automatic weapons and stacks of money sitting out in the open carport like it was normal. They popped the hood of Hicks's car and found white powder stashed away like a hidden bank. They even grabbed a business card from Hicks with the same color codes and numbers used in the ledgers from Sawyer and A.J. Smith's homes. The perfect connection. The investigation didn't cool off. It stretched wider every month. Agents kept running the same play. Get a warrant, hit the crib, and grab whatever substances, money, or guns they could find. By October '86, Sawyer dipped from his old spot on 95th Terrace and slid into a new place at 2137 Northwest 92nd Street. But the fresh address didn't stop the heat. When investigators raided the new crib, they found marijuana packaging gear, an adding machine, more ledgers, photos tying Sawyer, Hicks, and A.J. Smith together, piles of cash, and even more firepower. Late in 1986, the streets started talking, and investigators finally got a break on Samuel Smith's role in the operation. The lead came from his own cousin, Alice Roll, who was quietly working as an informant. Samuel had bragged to her that he was moving work for a man named Hicks. Sometimes Alice even bought substances straight from Samuel, and Samuel always made sure to get his supply from Hicks. She also saw firsthand how Hicks handled business, paying his crew in white powder right out of his own house. By February 1987, Alice pushed her luck and tried going straight to Hicks's house to buy more white powder. Hicks shut it down immediately. He told her that if she wanted anything, she had to deal with Samuel. Not long after, Samuel pulled up heated, scolding her for trying to go around him. He warned her that if he bought something from Hicks and it led to him getting caught, he'd be as good as dead. A few mornings later, he showed up at her spot again, telling her he'd heard whispers she was an informant, and the only reason she was still alive was because of his influence keeping things calm. Around that same time, another piece of the puzzle dropped into place. A woman named Deborah Powell started working with law enforcement in February 1987. Unlike Alice, Deborah already had ties to Hicks. She knew him socially and had bought white powder from him before. Now she was pulling the double role, moving through March and April with one foot in the streets and one foot in the investigation. Deborah kept making controlled buys straight from Hicks, each one recorded and watched by investigators like a trap being tightened. At one point, she even tried to raise the stakes, asking Hicks if she could grab a kilo or a half. Hicks didn't even flinch. He told her to just call him when she was ready. By late April, everything around the operation was heating up fast. On April 14th, and again on the 23rd, A.J. Smith, one of Hicks's closest right-hand men, told Deborah they were expecting a massive shipment, 40 kilos set to land at Dodge Island on April 24th. That same night, Deborah was sitting inside Hicks's spot on 105th Street with Hicks, Sawyer, and A.J. Smith. While chilling there, she noticed a briefcase sitting in the open trunk of Hicks's car. Inside was a fat stack of cash, $250,000 sitting bold in her face. According to A.J., that was her signal to move. Deborah slipped out, walked over to a nearby gas station, and made the call to Detective Dennis Reddington. Hours later, the real move kicked off. Hicks, Sawyer, and another associate pulled up in a van. Hicks stepped out holding a package that looked like straight product. Deborah overheard him tell AJ, "This stuff here better be like the other because this is righteous." Those words were the nail in the coffin. AJ then asked Deborah to ride with him and another man as they took the van to another one of Hicks's houses on 25th Avenue. Once they got there, AJ and his guys started unloading boxes into the garage, cracking open 2 of them. Inside were smaller packages stuffed with white powder. After everything was unloaded, they drove right back to Hicks's spot on 105 Street, completely unaware that law enforcement was already circling them like sharks. 3 days later, on April 27th, Deborah linked up with Detective Reddington and dropped key details that gave him everything he needed to secure a warrant for a house at 9800 Northwest 25th Avenue. While the paperwork was being pushed through, surveillance units already spotted Hicks pulling up to the property. He didn't stay long, about 30 minutes, before dipping out with Sawyer riding shotgun. That's when everything went wild. Agents tailed the car, and it turned into a high-speed chase through the streets. Cars flying, lights flashing, the whole scene on fire. Eventually, the agents boxed them in and forced the car to a stop. Reddington pulled up moments later, and when they searched Hicks's ride, they found a garage door opener, the key that cracked the whole operation open. Instead of wasting a second, they loaded Sawyer into a squad car and headed straight for the house. With the opener, agents popped the garage door, knocked, announced, and then stormed inside with the warrant ready to go. What they found was the mother lode. Over 11 kilos of white powder sitting in different stages, some raw, some already bagged and ready to hit the streets. Processing tools, packaging gear with color-coded labels, and ledgers filled with the same coded entries investigators had seen in earlier busts were scattered everywhere. And that wasn't all. Hidden around the place was even more evidence waiting to blow the case wide open. The place was loaded. Over $33,000 in cash, jewelry worth more than $400,000, 3 handguns, and even an assault-style rifle sitting bold in the open. To top it off, mail addressed to Samuel Smith tied the house straight back to another location at 2000 Northwest 105th Street, and from this spot, Hicks, Sawyer, and several others ended up getting cuffed and hauled off. Hicks suddenly found himself staring down charges that could bury a man for life. Prosecutors slammed him with operating a continuing criminal enterprise, a charge that alone carried a life sentence. And on top of that, they accused him of running a substance house less than 1,000 feet from a school, a move that doubled the punishment and added 30 years on its own. Even his wife Janet wasn't spared. She was hit with conspiracy to distribute white powder and possession charges. When police moved in, they stripped Hicks of every flashy piece of his lifestyle. 3 Cadillacs, a Mercedes, a Bronco, a Jaguar, a stretch limo, and 2 vans, all gone by sunrise. Most of the crew was locked up, but 4 suspects were still loose, including Joel Scott, a former Miami cop tied into the mess. The streets already knew the truth. Hicks's empire was crashing down fast. Cops raided 18 substance houses, plus 14 more properties linked to him, worth around $2.6 million. Just 6 of those houses had reportedly pulled in over $2 million in 9 months. Police straight up called them substance supermarkets. But Hicks tried painting a whole different picture. He swore his money came from landscaping and construction. Sitting in Dade County Jail, He claimed the government had been targeting him for years because he was a successful black man. He even pointed out how he once applied to join a minority building program, bragging in his 1985 application that his company employed more than 40 workers and aimed to give back to the community. But the feds weren't buying any of it. Not for a second. They built their case piece by piece until the grand jury was ready to move. Hicks and his right-hand man Sawyer were both indicted. Hicks faced a mountain of charges: running a criminal enterprise, conspiracy to traffic more than 5 kilos of white powder, 2 counts of selling substances near a school, 5 counts of possession with intent to distribute, and 5 counts of being a convicted felon caught with guns. Sawyer was hit almost the same way. Criminal enterprise, conspiracy, 2 counts of selling near a school, 3 weapons charges, plus extra substance counts stacked on top. And by December 21st, the hammer finally dropped. Bossman got 56 years plus 6 years of special parole and another 5 on supervised release. But Hicks, he took the hardest hit of them all. The judge slammed him with 137 years plus the same parole and supervision terms, a paper sentence designed to keep him locked away forever. That was the end of Money Hicks. Or at least that's what everybody thought. When those thick federal prison doors slammed shut, the government figured the Miami boys' empire would crumble overnight. But it didn't. Being locked up didn't stop them. It just changed their location. From behind bars, the 2 men turned their cells into command posts, running plays with coded letters, timed phone calls, and even lawyer visits that doubled as strategy meetings. Orders kept flowing to their lieutenants in Atlanta like nothing had changed at all. Hicks had a whole rotation of approved phone numbers, everything from girlfriends to a Florida travel agency, giving him cover to communicate. He'd even hang up mid-sentence to throw off the government scanners, then call right back and continue the conversation like he never stopped. Meanwhile, Sawyer, studying paralegal work inside, cooked up an even slicker move. He marked envelopes as privileged, so they couldn't be opened, then tucked detailed instructions inside for his right-hand men, like Big Will Roker. Later in his prison memoir, Sawyer summed it all up perfectly. A stamp and a chair could move more dope than a car full of hitters. By April 1988, Atlanta officials tried to swing back with a new plan. Police Chief Morris Redding and Housing Authority Director Sam Hyder promised more surveillance around crack houses, stricter checks to keep young people off corners, and tenant meetings to pull the community together. They started filling empty apartments to stop dealers from using them as stash spots. And even sidewalk vendors got scrutinized. Some were doubling as street-level pushers, turning simple strolls into undercover handoffs. The police thought momentum was finally on their side. Winston Theodore Brown, one of the Miami boys' top players, had just been convicted for unaliving another member inside Techwood Homes. Their leader, Anthony Johnson, out of Hollywood, Florida, was gone too, sprayed with 8 bullets in a hit that also left an innocent bystander, Vincent Rainwater, paralyzed after taking a shot in the back. On paper, these were major wins. But the same issue kept rolling around. Every time police locked up one crew, another squad flew in from Florida ready to replace them. Bond someone out today, and the next plane ticket heading south already had their name on it. The cycle felt endless, a revolving door of new faces, new soldiers, and the same operation running underneath. Meanwhile, the city tried another angle, giving young people in the project something real to hold on to besides the streets. For the first time, Techwood Homes had its own Little League team, a community football squad, and structured programs to keep the youth focused and active. On the surface, the projects looked calm. Neat rows of apartments, trimmed lawns, families outside, kids playing in patches of dirt under the sun. But beneath that calm shell, the Miami boys had brought a level of attention that never really disappeared. The neighborhood looked peaceful, but everybody knew the shadow of that crew was still stretching across Atlanta. By 1990, once the sun dropped, porches emptied out fast and doors stayed locked tight. The situation didn't just grow, it exploded. Copycats started popping up everywhere, claiming the name Miami Boy even if they'd never stepped foot near Florida. Police counted the original crew at around 30 or 40 members, but before long, anybody with ambition and a gun was using the label to look dangerous. A police bulletin exposed substance crews spreading through more than a dozen Atlanta neighborhoods. Some were small cliques, others had evolved into full-blown operations. Groups like Down by Law, Junior Ladies Down by Law, and the Herndon Homeboys were out here moving heroin and white powder, sometimes even robbing rival dealers when the streets got tight. Meanwhile, the Miami boys themselves were splitting into factions. The Egan Homes set held down Lindsay Street and Palmetto Avenue. The University John Hope Homes crew posted up around Greens Ferry Avenue and Delmar Lane. Other corners like Allison Court, Beckwith Street, and Campbellton Road were tied to different branches of the same web. On Cascade Place, another gang was setting up their base, while a crew calling themselves the No Shirts earned attention along Campbellton Road. With all these cliques, violence became the language everyone understood. Homicide Captain Calvin Wardlaw believes several homicides were linked to beef between Miami Boy sets and rivals like the John Hope robbing crew and the Herndon Homeboys. Shootings stretched from street corners to parking lots with bodies dropping all over Northwest and South Atlanta. A non-stop chain of retaliations. But even police admitted it was almost impossible to tell who was who. Some people were truly plugged in, while others just threw the name around hoping it earned them respect. As Wardlaw put it, what even is a Miami boy? Sure, some were really from Florida, but plenty weren't. They wore the title because it carried weight in neighborhoods where it had been whispered for years. None of this came out of nowhere. The violence had been bubbling for a long time, only now it was sharper, louder, and far more fatal. Then in November 1991, the Miami Boys carried their operation north to Washington, D.C., stepping into a whole new arena. Leading the charge was Cornell Augustus McKenzie, known in the streets as the Clique, along with 13 others who were ready to move heavy. McKenzie was running things strong, including a crack house on 14th Place SE, right in the middle of a community trying to stay stable. Prosecutors painted a grim picture of what residents dealt with daily. Dealers outside, guns being shuffled around, and dope moving openly while regular people just tried to get home safe. U.S. Attorney Richard Cullen said many residents weren't involved in the substance trade at all, yet were still victims simply for having to live around that chaos. The indictment laid everything bare: conspiracy, guns, and a massive crack operation with real Miami roots. All 13 co-defendants got pulled into it, but only one, 24-year-old Paul Brooks, was actually from D.C. The rest came straight out of Miami, where investigators said the whole network started taking shape back in 1986. Prosecutors claim McKenzie first tested the scene in Tampa, then pushed into Panama City before the operation really took flight. By 1987, business was booming. Word was spreading that DC couldn't get enough crack, and that's when McKenzie decided to bring his crew north to run things heavy. Women were flying into National Airport with white powder hidden in their underwear, while suitcases packed with guns rolled into the city on buses like traveling arsenals. McKenzie even tried to spark a gang battle in Old Town Alexandria just to lock down territory. Shots rang out multiple times, and somehow nobody ended up past, but the heat grew fast. Eventually, the walls closed in, and McKenzie got slapped with a 20-year sentence, the beginning of the end for his whole crew. But the final blow didn't land in D.C., it came years later in Atlanta. As the city prepared for the 1996 Summer Olympics, officials started tearing down public housing projects that had been strongholds for street gangs for decades. By the late 90s, with their neighborhoods gone and police pressure rising from every direction, the Miami Boys were running out of ground to stand on. In 1999, the last active dealer tied to the crew, Michael Delancey, was finally caught. What started as a bold push from Miami to the nation's capital ended scattered, broken, and collapsed. The Miami Boys once had a lock on the streets, but when the walls tightened, their empire fell apart just like the projects they used to run. What are your thoughts on this wild story? Drop a comment, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and see you on the next one.